Hello, I am Madeleine Black, and you are listening to the podcast show Unbroken, Healing Through Storytelling. The show where, as the title suggests, we speak to people that have got incredible stories. And I really believe in the power that comes when we share our stories. It's so important to have a voice, and my guest today really believes that too. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Judge Rosemarie Aquilina. Judge Aquilina earned her doctorate degree from Western Michigan Thomas M. Cooley Law School in 1984, after earning her Bachelor of Arts Degree from Michigan State University in 1979. She is a retired Michigan Army National Guard officer. She is a civilian judge, serving 4 years as Chief Judge and Sobriety Court Judge in the 55th District Court, and now 13 years as a 30th Circuit Court. You need to put your teeth in to say some of this. Judge Aquilina is a law professor and a motivational speaker. She's the author of Feel No Evil, Triple Cross Killer, and All Rise, and her memoir, Just Watch Me, was released December 2020 in partnership with Audible Reese Witherspoon. Judge Aquilina is the mother of 5 children, has 3 grandchildren, and lives in Michigan. Thank you so much, Judge Aquilina, for joining me today. How are you?
Great. Such a pleasure to be here and to talk with you especially.
You're welcome. So because my show is called Unbroken, the first question that I ask every guest that comes on is, what does the word unbroken mean to you?
It means go through every problem with pride, with your head held up, and don't listen to the naysayers. And make sure that when there's a bump in the road, you go over the bump as best as you can and don't fall in the pothole.
Yep. And you have definitely had a few bumps in your own life, really, haven't you? So in the UK, you are known for being the judge that sat on the Larry Nassar case. I know in America you've been known for more high-profile cases, but that's really when we heard of you. But I'd like to go back to your childhood a little bit, just to give people some background. So you were really born and grew up with your grandparents and didn't really know your parents until your parents came along when you were just 5 years old, and you felt like you were kidnapped because they took you back to live with them, didn't they?
Yes, I was born in Munich and my parents met earlier. My dad went to medical school in Munich. He's Maltese. And then with 2 crying babies, because my brother came 11 months and 2 days later, he couldn't study. So my mother, brother, and I emigrated to live with my grandparents. And I was so young that what happened was that I thought that my parents were my grandparents. I'm sorry, that my grandparents were my parents, because no one said, this is your mom and this is your dad. We all learned by our environment. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see my parents very much. And my mother was working, my father was abroad, and mom and dad became Nunnu and Nunna, which means grandmother and grandfather in Maltese. So when 5 years later, our family was put back together, no one said to me, well, you'll be visiting, but you're going with us because we are your parents. And even if they would have, it's too late, because my bonding was with my grandparents. They were my parents. So there we are, waving goodbye. And I'm feeling like I'm being stolen and kidnapped. And I felt that my whole life. And what we need to always do is to give children explanations, voice, let them ask questions, and answer them honestly. And everyone in my family who I've told this story to since I was a very small child just says, well, you were stupid. Of course they were your parents. Well, I wasn't stupid. We should never tell anybody that they're stupid for asking a question or for not knowing something. We have an obligation to inform people around us as to what's happening and why.
Yep. So even from a young age, you saw justice and the reason to be fair to people.
Yes. There's one of the things I do in my courtroom, and I did as an attorney, is I spend a lot of time with people when they were clients explaining, this is the law, this may happen, this might not happen, whatever it was, I educated them. So they would have a choice in their destiny. And I do that in my courtroom as well. I tell people the consequences of what will happen if if they don't do well on probation. I listen to them, whether they're the victim, for as long as they want me to listen. I also listen to defendants for as long as they want me to listen. And sometimes defendants bring people also to tell me about their background, because when you have the full story of what happened, you can make the most difference.
So in the UK, really, we heard about you a couple of years ago when you were the judge on Larry Nassar's case. What made you decide to give the women, you call them the sister survivors, allow them all to share their impact statements with him? Because it went on for many days, wasn't it, the sharing of their stories?
7 days. I've always done that since I was a district judge. So I've been a judge now for 17 years. Back then it was, 14 or 15 years. But anyway, I have always let everybody speak, and the victims come back and talk to me, or I see them around town and they say, that's helped me heal. It was the first time somebody actually validated me. So I know that it works. And the Nassar case, I didn't know anything about him. I'd never met him. I didn't ever notice him on the Olympics. I didn't watch the Olympics much. My family watches and would say, go watch this person on the vault or on the skis, and I'd see it then. I knew nothing about him. We were just ready to go to trial. I had pulled 800 jurors. We were going to start jury trial. And a couple of days before that, the attorneys came to me and said, would you accept a plea? And they told me what it was. And the prosecutor said, and we want more than just these 7 counts that he'll plead to speak. And I said, that's not a problem. I let everybody speak. And the defense said, everybody? And I said, yes. And they said, well, there's some people we don't want to speak. Like, for example, there was a doctor who was upset with Nassar. And I said, everyone means everyone. So they did a plea agreement that Nassar signed, thankfully, that said a cap of 125. But I've never put a limit. I've never put a time limit. I believe it's the people's court. It is the people's right to speak. So I let everybody speak. I announced I would let everybody speak. 169 spoke. 156 I dubbed sister survivors, because many of them hadn't planned to speak. Many of them hadn't planned to use their names. Many of them didn't know each other, but one empowered the next, empowered the next. And if you watch the film that's out there, I haven't seen it, but I very well recall that many times a sister survivor who would come up would be joined with 1 or 2 of the others who have spoken or were going to speak. And they would address him and they would say, I am not a number, I am a name. And you could see them and feel them as they spoke to him, taking back their power.
I can imagine how healing it was for other people to hear, especially women, young girls that hadn't even found their voice yet. When they saw their vulnerability and their bravery in speaking out, it really, really does encourage other people to find their voice. I think it's fantastic. I just wish we could clone you and put you into courts all over the place.
Yeah, and there were a lot of men who said, I was raped as a boy, or I was raped as a man, or in the military, or wherever. There's rapes that happen to men all over the place.
Yes, and I think in the prison system in America, the statistics of male rape is huge.
Horrible. And many of them said, when I saw those little girls tell their story, I told mine. And so I want you to know that you opened the door for me too. And I was just so honored that people felt that.
Yep. Oh, it just moves me every time. And that really is the purpose of the podcast and the purpose of speaking out, because it is so healing to hear other people's stories. And I like how you say that it opens the door for them, which they've maybe closed tight for many, many years. And I think when one door opens, then another door opens, and then another door opens, and then we grow and we expand.
Right. When you get into the lesbian, gay, trans, queer, the whole, other culture that people don't want to talk about, they are raped, almost half of them. Yeah. You can just go down the street, and if you have a gay friend or trans, they'll tell you, but the statistics bear it out. And they also came out and said, wow, we're going to talk to. So this problem, it's a systemic problem. It has to change. We have to listen. And all of these crimes against humans, I don't care what your sexual preference is or your gender or your religious belief, we are all humans, and we need to get treated equally when we report any kind of crime.